My husband's mother had no idea I secretly earned $60,000 a month. She dragged me out by my hair, yelling, "Parasites like you drain real families." I left calm, silent. Next morning, the house was seized, paid off with my money. Turns out, her precious son had been living off my debts for years. My husband's mother had no idea I secretly earned $60,000 a month. She dragged me out by my hair, yelling, "Parasites like you drain real families." I left calm, silent. Next morning the house was seized, paid off with my money. Turns out her precious son had been living off my debts for years. The sound of ripping hair from my scalp made me wince as Patricia's grip tightened, her knuckles white against my dark brown locks. Her eyes blazed with a fury I'd never seen before, not even during her worst criticisms of my cooking or housekeeping. "Parasites like you drain real families," she screamed, spittle flying from her lips as she dragged me toward our front door. Our dinner guests froze in horror, wine glasses suspended mid-air, forks hovering above plates of my carefully prepared lasagna. "Living off my hard-working son while you play dress-up with your little hobby." Michael stood motionless by the fireplace, his face drained of color, eyes fixed on the glossy magazine clutched in his mother's free hand. The magazine featuring my jewelry line and the six-figure business I'd built while everyone slept. Our secret was out, but not the whole truth. Not yet. I didn't fight back as she pushed me onto our porch, my designer dress, the one she assumed Michael had bought me, catching on the doorframe. In the eerie silence that followed her tirade, I simply nodded, collected my purse and walked barefoot to my car. The neighbors peeked through curtains, hungry for drama in our otherwise quiet suburban street. "You'll regret this," Patricia called after me, her voice carrying in the still night air. "My son deserves better than a leech who can't contribute." If only she knew that her precious son hadn't contributed a dime to our household in 5 months. If only she knew whose money had saved her own home from foreclosure after her late husband's medical bills arrived. But she would learn. By tomorrow morning she would understand exactly who had been supporting whom. I hadn't always worked in secret. 3 years ago I was a marketing executive at a firm in downtown Pittsburgh, working 60-hour weeks and bringing home a comfortable salary. I met Michael at a client dinner. He was the accountant handling their books with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that balanced my more outspoken nature. Our courtship was a whirlwind, and within 6 months, we were planning our wedding. "You'll be such a wonderful provider," his mother had gushed during our engagement party, patting her son's arm while barely acknowledging my career. "Lauren can finally slow down and focus on building a real home." Michael had squeezed my hand under the table, a silent apology for his mother's traditional views. "Mom, Lauren loves her job," he'd said, defending me with the strength that made me fall for him in the first place. "We're partners in this, but partnerships require honesty," something I discovered was in short supply after the honeymoon ended. The corporate burnout hit me 3 months into our marriage. After a panic attack in the office bathroom and a doctor's warning about stress-induced health problems, I made the difficult decision to resign. That same week, while organizing our home office, I found a small box of my grandmother's vintage jewelry that I'd inherited years ago. On a whim, I redesigned a few pieces, taught myself wire wrapping techniques through YouTube videos, and listed 3 items on an online marketplace. They sold within hours. A seed of an idea took root. Maybe this could be my bridge until I found another corporate position. Every night after Michael fell asleep, I would slip out of bed and work at our kitchen table, designing pieces that combined vintage elements with modern aesthetics. When my first month's sales hit $3,000, I was thrilled but hesitant to share the news. Michael had been so proud of being our primary provider, and his mother's voice seemed to echo in our home. A wife's little hobbies weren't real work, so I kept it quiet, treating it as something small and inconsequential, even as my sales doubled then tripled. I converted our guest bedroom into a studio when Michael was at work, telling him I was just organizing my craft supplies. He barely noticed, preoccupied with mounting pressure at his accounting firm where rumors of layoffs had everyone on edge. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. Michael came home early, his shoulders slumped, a cardboard box of desk items in his arms. "Budget cuts," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "They let go of our entire department." I held him as he cried that night, assuring him everything would be fine, that we had savings, that he'd find something better. The next morning, though, something strange happened. He got up at his usual time, put on his work clothes, kissed me goodbye and left with his briefcase. For 3 days I said nothing, assuming he was interviewing. On the 4th day I called his cell during lunch to wish him luck, and he answered with background noise that sounded suspiciously like our local coffee shop. "Can't talk now in a meeting," he whispered before hanging up. The deception became clear at Simmons Grocery 2 weeks later. I was selecting avocados when someone tapped my shoulder. Diane from Michael's office holiday party. "Lauren, how are you holding up?" she asked, genuine concern in her eyes. The layoffs were so sudden. Jim and I were talking about organizing a support dinner for all the families affected. I maintained my composure somehow, smiling through the revelation. That's thoughtful. We're managing one day at a time. That night, as Michael pretended to share stories from his non-existent workday, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him, as pride was already wounded enough. Instead, I would scale my business to support us both while maintaining the illusion that his severance and unemployment were covering our expenses. I worked with renewed purpose, expanding my jewelry line, hiring a virtual assistant who never knew my real name, and setting up drop shipments so suppliers never came to our door. When my monthly revenue hit $25,000, I opened a separate bank account and arranged for our mortgage, utilities, and credit card bills to be paid automatically from it. Meanwhile, Michael's mother Patricia increased her visits, always making comments about my expensive taste and questioning whether we should be living more frugally on one income. If only she knew that one income was keeping us afloat, and it wasn't her son's. "I don't know how you afford those shoes on Michael's salary," she remarked one afternoon, eyeing my designer heels, purchased with my own earnings but worn only when I had a believable excuse. "Michael deserves his small indulgences," I replied with a practiced smile. "He worked so hard for us." The threads of our mutual deception were weaving a tapestry that would soon unravel in ways none of us could imagine. As I drove away from our house that night, Patricia's words still ringing in my ears, I knew the time for secrets was finally over. I spent that night at Sarah's house, staring at her guest room ceiling until dawn broke through pale curtains. My phone buzzed relentlessly with Michael's texts, first apologetic, then desperate, finally angry that I'd humiliated him by walking out. Not once did he mention his mother dragging me by my hair in front of our friends. His silence on that spoke volumes. Sunday arrived with dreaded predictability. Patricia's standing invitation for Sunday dinner remained the one sacred commitment in Michael's calendar. Unemployment and alcoholism be damned. I'd spent 3 years of Sundays in her formal dining room, each visit more excruciating than the last. "You're not seriously considering going today?" Sarah asked, handing me coffee in her chipped mug that read "World's Okayest Friend." "After what happened? If I don't show, she wins," I said simply. "Besides, appearances matter to Patricia more than anything. She'll expect us to pretend nothing happened." And I was right. When Michael picked me up, his eyes bloodshot and hands trembling slightly, the only acknowledgement of the previous night's disaster was his mumbled, "Mom says she got carried away, but she stands by what she said." Patricia's pristine colonial home loomed at the end of her maple-lined driveway, a monument to the proper family she believed herself to preside over. The dining room table was set with her wedding china, the faded blue pattern that she reminded me monthly would someday belong to Michael's wife, Lauren. She greeted me with air kisses as if she hadn't called me a parasite 20 hours earlier. "That dress is certainly bold for a family dinner. I suppose those online fashion sites make everything look more appropriate than it is." I smiled tightly. The designer dress I'd bought with my own money suddenly feeling like armor rather than something to apologize for. "Michael mentioned you made the salad." She continued inspecting the bowl I'd brought. "A bit heavy on the vinegar, but it will do. Not everyone has the gift of cooking." Michael refilled his whiskey tumbler for the third time before we'd even sat down. These days he carried a flask to his fake job interviews. His once bright eyes had dulled, and the strong jawline that had attracted me was softening under a neglected beard. While I worked through the night filling orders, he passed out on the couch watching reruns, the job search websites forgotten on his laptop. Every morning he still maintained the charade, pressing his shirts, carrying his father's old briefcase, kissing me goodbye. I often wondered where he actually went, until one Tuesday when I had to ship an urgent order and spotted him through the window of Milo's coffee shop, hunched over his laptop, the same cold coffee sitting untouched for hours. The fork clinked against Patricia's china as she set it down deliberately. "Michael tells me the Henderson account is going splendidly. They're lucky to have you managing their portfolio, sweetheart." Michael nodded mechanically. "Just doing my job, Mom." I focused on my roast beef, perfectly medium rare as Patricia served it every Sunday for 25 years. The familiar knot of complicity tightened in my stomach. How long could we maintain this elaborate fiction? Later that week everything changed. A lifestyle influencer with 3 million followers shared a photo wearing my moonstone and silver statement necklace. By morning my online store had crashed from traffic, and when it came back online I sold out of every piece within hours. My phone notifications became a constant symphony of order confirmations. The viral post pushed my monthly revenue to $60,000, more than Michael had ever made at his accounting job. I needed real help, not just my virtual assistant. After careful consideration, I rented a small workshop space in an industrial building 20 minutes from our neighborhood. I hired 2 local artisans under strict NDAs, explaining that my husband's family was traditional and would disapprove of my business. Patricia's surprise visit came on a Wednesday afternoon. I had just returned from the workshop and forgotten to hide my new MacBook Pro on the kitchen counter. The delivery box for my Louboutin heels, a celebratory splurge after landing a major department store contract, sat conspicuously by the recycling bin. She let herself in with the emergency key Michael had given her. I was in the shower when she arrived and emerged in my robe to find her holding my laptop, the screen displaying my jewelry business dashboard with the monthly sales graph climbing like a mountain peak. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice dangerously quiet. "$60,000? Last month." "Patricia, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That while my son works himself to exhaustion, you're spending his hard-earned money on fancy computers and," she gestured wildly at the shoebox, "ridiculous shoes that cost more than my monthly pension?" The front door opened before I could respond. Michael stumbled in, reeking of whiskey at 3 in the afternoon. His bloodshot eyes widened at the tableau before him, his mother clutching my laptop, me in a bathrobe, both of us locked in silent combat. "Mom? What are you doing here?" He slurred slightly. "Apparently discovering that your wife has expensive taste far beyond your means," she snapped. "Have you seen these sales numbers? Is she gambling online? Or worse, selling something inappropriate?" The moment hung between us. My chance to reveal the truth. But Michael's face crumpled, shame and fear washing over his features as he realized his unemployment might be exposed. I made my choice in that instant. "It's just a spreadsheet for a jewelry design course I'm taking." I lied smoothly. "The numbers are hypothetical projections for our final assignment." Patricia's suspicious gaze lingered on the screen. "And these shoes? This computer?" "Anniversary gifts," Michael interjected, finding his backbone momentarily. I wanted to spoil her. The lie cost him. I watched Patricia's disapproval deepen the lines around her mouth. "You're being irresponsible with money, Michael. Just like your father was before." "That's enough, Mom," he interrupted with unusual firmness. She left in a huff, but the damage was done. That night, Michael drank himself into oblivion, mumbling apologies for not being enough. I held him until he passed out, then returned to my workshop to fill orders until dawn, the weight of our shared deception becoming unbearable. The neighborhood barbecue 2 weeks later brought everything to a boiling point. The Andersons hosted their annual summer gathering, and everyone who witnessed my humiliation at our dinner party would be there. Michael insisted we attend, to show everything's fine. I wore a simple sundress that wouldn't attract Patricia's criticism, but made the mistake of wearing a prototype of my new jewelry line, a delicate gold necklace with interwoven sapphires that caught the sunlight. "What a unique piece," Ellen Anderson remarked, leaning closer. "I've never seen anything like it." Before I could respond, Patricia appeared with 2 neighbors in tow. "My son has exquisite taste in gifts, doesn't he?" She beamed, placing a possessive hand on Michael's arm. "Senior accountant at 33 and still finds ways to spoil his wife." Michael's smile didn't reach his eyes as he nodded along, the plastic cup in his hand trembling slightly. I stood frozen, torn between protecting his fragile ego and screaming the truth to the immaculate suburban gardens around us. "He's the real provider in the family," Patricia continued, her eyes challenging me directly. "A proper man who takes care of his responsibilities." Behind her words lay the unspoken accusation. What exactly was I providing? As I watched my husband drain another drink, avoiding everyone's eyes, I wondered how much longer I could bear the weight of these appearances before something broke irreparably. Patricia's words hung in the humid summer air as conversation around us resumed. Michael wandered off toward the drinks table, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the weight of our charade. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment of solitude. My phone buzzed in my purse. The email subject line caught my breath. "Invitation, Emerging Designers Showcase, Philadelphia." I scanned the message with trembling fingers. The Eastern Seaboard Jewelry Association was inviting me to display my collection at their annual showcase. An event attended by major retailers, collectors, and press from across the country. This was my moment. The opportunity that could elevate my business from successful online venture to recognized brand. All I needed to do was accept and destroy the fragile illusion we'd built. My name would be printed in programs displayed on banners. Photographs would appear in trade publications. There would be no hiding behind an anonymous business identity anymore. Everyone would know. Michael, Patricia, our entire social circle. I splashed cold water on my face and rejoined the barbecue, the email burning a hole in my consciousness. Michael was now slumped in an Adirondack chair, eyes unfocused as he listened to Dave Anderson talk about his latest golf game. I slipped my hand into his. "Ready to head home?" I asked softly. He nodded, relief washing over his features. The walk home was silent, the weight of pretense exhausting us both. While Michael fell into bed still fully clothed, I stayed up, staring at the invitation, cursor hovering over the accept button until sunrise streaked the sky with pink. 3 days later I arrived home from my workshop to find Michael sitting at our kitchen island, my business bank statement spread before him. His face was ashen, hands gripping a half-empty whiskey glass. The statement showing last month's $63,420 revenue lay directly in front of him. "I was looking for our tax returns," he said, voice hollow. The drawer was unlocked. I set down my bag slowly. Weichel, $63,000. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. In 1 month. Well, I've been pretending to have a job I lost months ago. I wanted to tell you, I said, sitting beside him. I just didn't know how. How long? He asked. How long have you been supporting us? 5 months, I admitted. Since your layoff. A sound escaped him. Half laugh, half sob. All this time I thought I was protecting you from the truth. He gestured wildly at the statements. But you've been carrying us both. And I've been what? A pathetic fraud. No, I insisted, taking his hands. You were hurt. I understand that. My mother can never know, he whispered, suddenly gripping my fingers with desperate strength. Lauren promised me, if she found out I wasn't providing for my family, that my wife was the breadwinner. She couldn't finish the sentence, but I understood. Patricia's entire identity was wrapped in traditional gender roles and appearances. Her son's perceived success was her own validation. His failure would destroy her carefully constructed reality. I got invited to a design showcase, I said quietly. It could change everything for the business. Terror flashed across his face. You can't. Lauren, please. Not yet. I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. That night I declined the invitation, citing scheduling conflicts. Another sacrifice on the altar of appearances. The following weeks brought new tensions. Patricia's suspicions about our lifestyle didn't abate. When I traded in my 5-year-old sedan for a modest luxury SUV, a necessary upgrade to transport my jewelry inventory, her eyes narrowed during her next visit. Moving up in the world, aren't we? She remarked, running a manicured finger along the leather dashboard. Michael must be doing very well indeed. 2 days later, Sarah called me over for coffee, her expression troubled. You need to know what's being said, she began hesitantly. Patricia told the book club you married Michael for his money. She's suggesting you're pressuring him to live beyond his means. I set down my cup. She called me a gold digger? The irony was almost laughable. Not in those exact words, Sarah hedged, but she made it clear she thinks you're taking advantage of him. She reached across the table. Lauren, this is eating you alive. I see how exhausted you are working all night maintaining this pretense. When are you going to tell the truth? It's not my truth to tell, I said softly. It's Michael's. Sarah had been my confidant since I moved my workshop operations out of our home. She'd helped me load inventory into my car on days when Michael went to his mother's. She'd listened as I vented my frustrations, always offering a sympathetic ear and never judgment. At least consider talking to someone professional, she suggested. This level of stress isn't sustainable. He was right. The migraines had started 2 months ago, blinding pain that arrived with the pressure of maintaining our facade. Sleep had become a luxury between filling orders and worrying about Michael's increasing dependence on alcohol. The charity gala for children's cancer research arrived in early autumn. Michael had sobered up for the occasion, determined to network with former colleagues who might offer job leads. I wore a simple black dress that even Patricia couldn't criticize, accessorized with my latest design, a statement necklace featuring cascading opals set in rose gold. That piece is extraordinary, a woman commented during cocktail hour, extending her hand. I'm Elaine Winters, fashion editor at Style Monthly. My heart skipped. Lauren Thompson. Thank you. It's one of my own designs. You're a designer? Her interest piqued immediately. The craftsmanship is museum quality. Do you have a collection? Before I could answer, Patricia materialized at my elbow, champagne flute in hand. Lauren dabbles in crafts, she interjected dismissively. Just a little hobby. Elaine's perfectly arched eyebrow rose. This goes well beyond dabbling. I'd love to feature your work in our Emerging Artisans spread next month. Patricia's face tightened as Elaine handed me her business card. Call my office Monday. We'll set up a proper interview and photoshoot. As Elaine walked away, Patricia turned to me, voice low and dangerous. What game are you playing, Lauren? First the car, now this? Do you think people won't talk about where the money's coming from? What exactly are you implying? I asked, my patience finally fraying. I'm saying appearances matter, she hissed. And something doesn't add up about yours. I spotted Michael across the room watching our exchange with naked anxiety. The facade was cracking, hairline fractures spreading through our carefully constructed image. One push and the entire structure would collapse around us. That night, after Michael had fallen asleep, I called the number on Elaine's card and left a message accepting her offer. The time for hiding was over. Whatever came next, I would face it standing in my truth, even if it meant walking alone. 3 weeks after my late-night call to Elaine, life continued in its precarious balance. Michael had landed 2 job interviews, real ones this time, and was drinking less. My workshop had expanded to include a 3rd assistant. The photo shoot for Style Monthly had gone smoothly, with Elaine gushing over each piece in my collection. For a brief moment I allowed myself to hope that perhaps we could transition into honesty without catastrophe. Then came Thursday. I was packaging orders when Sarah called. her voice unnaturally tight. "Lauren, you need to prepare yourself." "Patricia knows." My hands froze mid-fold on tissue paper. "Knows what exactly?" "Everything. The new issue of Style Monthly was delivered to Haute Cut Salon this morning." Patricia was under the dryer when her stylist brought it to her, gushing about how she knew someone featured inside. Sarah paused. "The headline calls you jewelry's rising star and mentions your $60,000 monthly revenue." Cold dread pooled in my stomach. "Where is she now?" "She left the salon 20 minutes ago." Her hair was still wet. I thanked Sarah and immediately called Michael, who was supposedly at a job interview but more likely at his usual coffee shop. No answer. I texted, "Your mother saw the magazine feature. She knows about my business. Call me immediately." Within seconds my phone lit up. "What magazine? What have you done?" Michael's voice was panicked, the background noise suggesting he was indeed at Milo's Coffee Style Monthly. "The interview I mentioned from the gala," kept my voice steady. "Michael, come home now. We need to face this together." "I can't. I have another interview at 3 o'clock, he lied automatically. "No you don't," I said quietly. "Please don't make me face your mother alone." The silence stretched between us until he whispered, "I'll be there in 20. I had just enough time to cancel my afternoon workshop session and drive home. Our dinner guests would arrive at 7 o'clock, a casual gathering with neighbors I'd planned weeks ago. There was no time to cancel, and perhaps having others present would temper Patricia's reaction. Michael arrived looking haggard, his interview suit wrinkled. "Maybe she won't come," he said, pacing our kitchen. "Maybe she'll cool down first." I shook my head. "You know your mother better than that." We spent the afternoon in tense preparation for the inevitable storm. When our guests began arriving, the Hendersons from across the street, Dave and Ellen Anderson, Sarah and her husband Mark, I almost convinced myself Patricia might wait until tomorrow. The lasagna was just coming out of the oven when our front door flew open without a knock. Patricia stood in the entryway, clutching the glossy magazine with white knuckles. Her salon cape still clipped around her neck and her hair set in messy half-finished curls. The salon must have been in chaos after her abrupt departure. "I want everyone to see this," she announced, holding the magazine aloft like evidence at a trial. Our guests froze, wine glasses halfway to lips, forks suspended over salad plates. "My son's wife has been lying to all of us." She slapped the magazine down on our dining table. The pages opened to my 4-page spread. My photograph smiled back at me, surrounded by my jewelry pieces, and the headline, "Lauren Thompson, crafting modern heirlooms at $60,000 per month. Is this some kind of joke?" Patricia demanded, her finger jabbing at the revenue figure mentioned in the article. "Are you running some kind of scam using my son's good name?" "Mom, please," Michael began, his voice faltering. "Let's discuss this privately." "Privately? Like she's been secretly running this business behind everyone's back." Patricia's voice rose with each word. "While you work yourself to exhaustion providing for her, she's been what? Playing entrepreneur. Taking credit for your success." The irony of her accusations might have been comical if not for the venom in her voice. I stepped forward, determined to end the charade once and for all. "Patricia, that money is mine. The business is mine. I built it from nothing over the past 3 years. I kept my voice level dignified. There's been no scam, just hard work." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "You expect us to believe you've been earning 5 times what my son makes while pretending to be a housewife? What kind of fool do you take me for?" The room had gone deathly quiet. Even Sarah, who knew the truth, seemed unable to intervene in the face of Patricia's fury. "Mom?" Michael said, moving between us. "Lauren's telling the truth." He swallowed hard. "In fact, she's been supporting us both since I lost my job 5 months ago." The confession hung in the air like shattered glass. Patricia's face contorted in disbelief. "What did you say?" she whispered. "I was laid off in April," he continued, his voice gathering strength. "Lauren's jewelry business has paid our mortgage, our bills, everything while I've been looking for work." For a moment, Patricia stood motionless, processing this betrayal of her worldview. Then she lunged forward with surprising speed, her hand tangling in my hair before anyone could react. "Parasites like you drain real families," she screamed, dragging me toward the door with shocking strength. The pain brought tears to my eyes as she yanked harder. "Pretending to be successful when you're living off my son and making him lie to cover your pathetic little business." Our dinner guests watched in horror as she shoved me onto the porch. "You manipulated him into this lie, didn't you? Made him feel so worthless he had to pretend." I looked past her to Michael, silently pleading for intervention. He stood frozen by the fireplace, shame and fear paralyzing him. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, choosing self-preservation over defense of his wife. In that moment I knew our marriage was over. "You'll regret this," Patricia called as I walked calmly to my car, barefoot and dignified despite the throbbing pain in my scalp. "My son deserves better than a leech who can't contribute." I drove straight to Sarah's house, knowing she would follow as soon as she could gracefully exit the disaster unfolding in my dining room. Her guest room was already familiar territory from my previous retreat after Patricia's outbursts. While waiting for Sarah, I made 3 calls to my lawyer, my financial advisor, and a locksmith. The time for half measures and secret keeping had passed. By morning, both Patricia and Michael would understand exactly who had been supporting whom and at what cost. As I set my phone down, a strange calm settled over me. The facade had finally shattered completely, leaving only truth in its wake. Whatever came next would at least be honest. Sarah arrived home an hour after I did. Her face flushed with indignation. "I've never seen anything so appalling in my life," she said, wrapping me in a hug. "Are you okay?" I nodded, gesturing to the paperwork spread across her guest bed. "I've been busy." She surveyed the documents, bank statements, property records, and a thick folder labeled Thompson Holdings LLC. "What is all this?" she asked. "The truth," I replied simply, "and tomorrow everyone will know it." I slept soundly for the first time in months, waking to dozens of missed calls and texts from Michael. I ignored them all and made coffee in Sarah's kitchen, reviewing my plan for the day ahead. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, watching me apply makeup with steady hands. "It's not too late to handle things privately." Privacy allowed this situation to fester, I said. "It's time for transparency." At precisely 9 a.m. I pulled into our driveway. Michael's car was there, as was Patricia's. Perfect. The locksmith had already come and gone. The new keys sat heavy in my purse. I entered what had once been our home with calm purpose, finding Michael and Patricia in the kitchen. She was berating him about his unemployment while he stared hollow-eyed into a coffee cup. Both looked up when I entered, startled by my composed appearance after last night's drama. "Lauren," Michael began, rising quickly. "I'm so sorry about last night. Mom was just upset and I came to drop these off," I interrupted, placing a thick manila envelope on the kitchen island. "You'll both want to review them." Patricia scoffed. "If you think some silly legal threats will intimidate me, they're not threats," I said, maintaining eye contact. "They're mortgage statements for both this house and yours, Patricia." Her hand froze mid-gesture. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I opened the envelope, removing 2 sets of documents. "These show all payments on both properties for the past 6 months, all made from my business account." Michael approached, slowly scanning the papers with growing disbelief. "But I thought the mortgage was on autopay from our joint account." "It was until the funds ran out 4 months ago." I kept my voice neutral, reciting facts rather than accusations. "When you started withdrawing from our savings for your daily expenses but weren't depositing anything, I adjusted the payments to come directly from my business." Patricia snatched the papers, her face reddening as she saw the truth in black and white. "This is some kind of trick," she sputtered. The doorbell rang. "Perfect timing. That would be the sheriff," I said quietly. "With eviction papers for your house, Patricia." Her face drained of color as Michael looked between us in confusion. "Eviction? Mom's house is paid off. Dad left it free and clear when he died." I shook my head gently. "Your father re-mortgaged the house to pay for his cancer treatments. The bank was foreclosing after 3 missed payments when I bought it through my business holding company 7 months ago." The sheriff's knock came more insistently. Michael opened the door to find not only the uniformed officer but 2 of our neighbors who had witnessed last night's scene, their curiosity bringing them outside to watch the morning's developments. "Patricia Hargrove?" the sheriff called out, official papers in hand. She appeared in the doorway like a cornered animal. "There's been a mistake," she insisted. "This is my house. My late husband's house. Not according to county records, ma'am. This property belongs to Thompson Holdings LLC, and they've initiated eviction proceedings. You have 30 days to vacate." Patricia turned to me, comprehension dawning in her eyes. You bought my house?" The accusation in her voice was unmistakable, as though I'd stolen something rightfully hers. "I saved your house," I corrected her, "and paid the mortgage for months while you called me a parasite." As the sheriff left, our small audience of neighbors grew, drawn by the commotion. Michael pulled me into the living room, his face ashen. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" he pleaded. "You weren't ready to hear it," I said. "You were barely holding yourself together." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Lauren. For everything. I'll make it up to you, I swear." For a moment, I glimpsed the man I'd fallen in love with, earnest and vulnerable. Then he added, "Just please don't tell anyone else about the jobs, or Mom's house. Always appearances. Even now." "There's something else you should know," I said. "The irregular withdrawals from my business account. 5,000 here, 7,000 there. I traced them." His face crumpled. "I was trying to help Mom with Dad's leftover medical bills," he confessed. "And then there were the credit cards he didn't know about. I just needed to maintain things until I found another job." "You stole from me," I said simply, "while I was keeping our lives afloat." Patricia stormed into the room, having overheard. Don't you dare make my son feel guilty if you had been honest about your precious business from the start. Stop. My voice cut through her tirade with unexpected authority. For 3 years I've endured your criticism and judgment. I've watched you undermine my marriage and belittle my contributions. I'm not here for revenge, Patricia. I just want you to finally see the truth. I turned to Michael. I've filed for divorce. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. As I moved toward the door, Patricia called after me. You think you're so clever, but you've destroyed this family. I paused, turning to face them both one last time. No, Patricia. I subsidize this family. There's a difference. 3 months later I stood in the sunlit space of my first physical storefront. Thompson Handcrafted, read the elegant sign above imported Italian marble countertops. My team had expanded to 7 artisans, all women re-entering the workforce after career breaks. The divorce had been finalized with surprising speed once Michael realized fighting would mean public exposure of his deception. I'd been fair in the settlement, even allowing him 6 more months in the house while he secured stable employment. Patricia had moved in with her sister in Ohio after the eviction, her influence in our social circle evaporating once the truth about Michael's unemployment spread. Sarah entered carrying a bouquet for our grand opening. Ready for the ribbon cutting? She asked, surveying the space with pride. Almost, I replied, adjusting a display case of my newest collection. Pieces inspired by transformation and rebirth. As we prepared to open the doors, I caught my reflection in the polished glass. The woman looking back at me stood straight and confident, unburdened by secrets or shame. The weight of appearances had been replaced by something infinitely more valuable: authenticity. The first customers began to arrive, many from our old neighborhood, some who had witnessed my humiliation that night and now viewed me with newfound respect. There were also unfamiliar faces, drawn by the Style Monthly feature and subsequent press coverage of my inspiring entrepreneurial journey. None of them knew the whole story, of course, but they didn't need to. I cut the ribbon to applause, stepping forward into a future built on my own terms. No more secrets. No more pretending, just the beautiful imperfect truth of a life reclaimed.